We are in 2 Kings chapter 18, where we have been looking at Assyria's continued dominance. Assyria has been the main problem for God's people for the last several chapters now. We saw how it was that the Assyrians were the ones who came and took the northern kingdom, took Israel into captivity, and after doing that, they've just kind of continued their push even further south into the nation of Judah. And so in Judah, they have taken the city of Lachish. That was a huge victory in the eyes of King Sennacherib, the king of Assyria at the time. He had those big reliefs is what they were called, but the big kind of carvings and artwork that was made within his kingdom that showed from beginning to the end all of the siege that took place, how it is that people came and bowed down and paid tribute to Sennacherib, and those who did it, they were led away and they were tortured and they were killed. But for the rest of them, they were all carried basically as far, well, that's Lachish, but yeah, Lachish, they either paid tribute and would essentially be taken into captivity, or they would be killed. But from there in Lachish, then Sennacherib is going to make a push on toward Jerusalem, and that's kind of where we are right now. Sennacherib has come. He is surrounding the city of Jerusalem. His officials are kind of parlaying. They're talking with Hezekiah's officials. They're trying to kind of work things out. And essentially what you have is Sennacherib's officials are really trying to intimidate the people of Jerusalem into surrendering themselves and into submitting to King Sennacherib. A lot of the things that goes into their intimidation basically boils down to what we looked at the end of class last week, is how within the message that was being given, that you don't need to trust in Egypt. The way that Sennacherib's men put it is they're like a broken reed who's only going to hurt you more than they will help you. But then beyond that, what's more insulting, more than anything else that's going to be said, is that the Assyrians are telling the people of God that they cannot trust in Him. They're telling them you can't trust in God. It's brought up to them how it is that the Assyrians had gone and conquered all of these other nations and basically were more powerful and defeated all of their gods. So who is the God of Judah? Who's the God of Jerusalem that's going to be able to stand up against the Assyrians? And even within that, if you look in verse 25, I believe it is, verse 25, they even make a mention how it is that basically because of how they've been able to come and actually start surrounding Jerusalem, and they've been taking and picking off cities of Judah, what they're saying that means is that God has told them to come and to take them captive, has come to take the city and to basically take over. And of course, that's not actually what's going on here. God, of course, is allowing all of this to happen, but it's an opportunity for Hezekiah and for the people to make things right, to turn back to God, to look to Him, to trust in Him. But the way the Assyrians are going about this is saying, you cannot trust in your God. But now let's look at the Hezekiah, his officials' response to all of these things that have been going on. Somebody read 2 Kings chapter 18 and verse 26.
Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, Shebna, and Joab, said to Rabshakeh, please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it, and do not speak to us in Hebrew in the hearing of the people who are on the wall.
So the Aramaic, that would have been kind of the official political type of language the Assyrians were going to be using. But of course, what language were God's people speaking? They're speaking Hebrew. So what's the request they're making? All right, speak in Aramaic, right? Let's not be speaking in Hebrew, because if you speak in Hebrew, who's going to understand it? All the people who are up on the walls and close enough to hear, the shouting back and forth. Let's not speak in Hebrew, because we don't want to do what? We don't want to scare the people. We don't want the people to start getting worried and anxious and everything else. Let's just use the proper political language. Let's use your language. We understand it. We can speak it. A show of respect to them in that. But of course, at the same time, like we realize, we don't want everyone to get scared, and we don't want for people to potentially start turning from the inside. But that's what the Assyrians really were wanting to be done. So let's keep moving on, and as we look at the rest of this, or almost to the end of the chapter, with Sennacherib's confidence, let's have someone read verses 27 to 35.
Rabshakeh said to them, "Has my master sent me to your master and to you to speak these words, and not to the men who sit on the wall, who will eat and drink their own waste with you?" Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out with a loud voice in Hebrew, and spoke, saying, "Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you from his hand, nor let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city shall not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make peace with me by a present, and come out to me, and every one of you eat from his own vine, and every one from his own fig tree, and every one of you drink the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive groves and honey, that you may live and not die. But do not listen to Hezekiah, lest he persuade you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations at all delivered its land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Haman and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim and Hinnom and Iva? Indeed, have they delivered Samaria from my hand? Who among all the gods of the land have delivered their countries from my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem from my hand?
So what you have going on here is the Assyrians at the start of this are really wanting to intimidate the people, like we've been saying. That's why originally they're speaking in Hebrew. The request is made, hey, let's not speak in Hebrew, let's speak in Aramaic. Right? Why should everyone else have to hear what's going on here? And the Assyrian response is, because we want them to hear it. Because we want them to do the right thing. Because we want them to turn, and we want them to come and to pay tribute. We don't want them to be deceived by Hezekiah into thinking that the Lord is going to deliver them. We don't want them to be deceived into thinking they can stand up against the mighty Assyrians. And so they're going to go ahead, continue speaking in Hebrew, going to basically then get to the point of letting everybody know, if you don't pay tribute, if you don't come and bow down, then what's going to be the result? You're going to end up eating and drinking your own waste. Because remember what the Assyrians are doing. They are surrounding the city of Jerusalem. I think about this even like back in the Civil War. One of the tactics that would be done by the opposing forces would be you would surround a camp, you would surround a key city of the other army, of the Union or of the Confederacy. And what you would do in doing that is basically restrict and cut off all the supplies from being able to come in. And so the Assyrians are essentially doing that. They're going to surround the city, not let anything in or out. Eventually, you're going to run out of things to eat. You're going to start to run out of water to drink. And all you're going to be left with is what you yourself, your body is producing. That's what the Assyrians are doing. That's what they are intimidating the people with. But in contrast, if you pay tribute, if you come bow down to Sennacherib, well, you can enjoy peace. You can enjoy ease and luxury, sit under your own vine, under your own fig tree, drink from your own cisterns. You can have all of these amazing things right now, And then it said to him, then I'll take you to a land like your own. Already telling them, you're not going to stay there, but I'll just try to make sure you end up in good land. One similar to what you have with all of these nice fruits and trees that are already producing. And it's a lot of language that's really just trying to, again, intimidate. Because if you are in the city of Jerusalem, and you look out and you see the army of the Assyrians starting to draw closer and closer and closer, and word has already reached you about what it is they did back in Lachish, and how it is they had already taken your neighbors to the north into captivity, and now you're hearing them saying they're about to do all of these things to you. What do you think you might be starting to think you should do? You got to either get out of there, or at this point with the city surrounded, the temptation's probably going to be, I probably just need to go out there and bow down and pay tribute and just go ahead and show my loyalty to them so that maybe they won't lead me into captivity, so that maybe they won't kill me or my family. That's what the Assyrians are wanting the people to do, to scare them into doing that, because if everybody starts to leave Jerusalem and go out and bow down and pay tribute, join up with the Assyrians, then eventually the leaders are going to follow suit as well. But that's not what's going to happen as we continue to look through and read through the context. Johnny?
I'm just going to say, we did similarly in Vietnam. We would drop pamphlets
Mm-hmm.
to tell those who were on our side, you need to separate yourself from the enemy, because we're coming after them. But basically all that did was tell them, block all the exits, keep everybody in. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a strategy that's been happening for a very long time, right? And another thing that we see happening in this, and it's already been mentioned in the initial message that came about trusting in God, and how none of the gods of the other lands they conquered could protect the people. And it comes up again right here. Once you get past everything about the life of ease and luxury, it goes on at the end of verse 32 to tell the people, don't listen to Hezekiah in case he persuades you by saying that the Lord will deliver us. Don't listen to your king when he says that God can protect you, that God can deliver you, that God is greater, that God is stronger. And what's their reasoning? They say that you shouldn't listen to that. Because what did the gods of all the other nations, the Assyrians, do?
Nothing.
They did absolutely nothing. Now, of course, what's the reason they did nothing?
Because they are nothing.
Because they are nothing, right? But in the minds of the Assyrians, the God of Israel is just like all of those gods. Now, something else I find interesting in this is the mention of these particular gods of the people. Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim and Hena and Eva? Indeed, have they delivered Samaria from my hand? Do you notice who's not mentioned as being the God over Samaria? Jehovah God. Who were the people in Samaria when it was taken captive?
The Israelites.
The Israelites, the children of who? God. And God is not even associated with that land. That tells you just how bad things were in Israel, even before they're taken captive. But even still at this point, this should be something that's kind of a wake-up call or a moment of pause for the people, because they knew it was their own brethren who were in the northern kingdom. It was their own brethren who were in Samaria, and there's no mention here at all of Jehovah God. Now, you think about all of the things already we've considered in previous chapters, and about the impression, the way that we live our life gives an impression to other people about who our God is. And so obviously the impression from the people of Samaria was that God is just like any other God, and really they're serving all these other gods more than they were Jehovah God.
Yeah, it just goes to show, they're not that far removed from God through Joshua.
Yeah.
Conquering all this land. 800 years maybe at this point? Not even that much.
It's not been too long.
Judges was like 400 400 years,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, really not even that long, probably like 500-600 years at this point, from them conquering all
Yeah.
this land through God.
Yeah.
And conquering the giants, and conquering all this stuff, and the walls of Jericho falling down. I mean, all this stuff, and here God is not even mentioned, and wondering why they're being conquered.
Yeah.
You know, and like you say, for us, we wonder why we struggle in life, and feel like we're being conquered through this or that. How much is God in our life?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that the center focus that's keeping us? Are we being conquered because of our own lack of worshiping other things than God Jehovah?
And even thinking about that in our life, how often are some of our problems the result of giving in when others are saying, God doesn't know, God doesn't care. What's he going to do, strike you down with fire? He's not struck me down yet, right? How often maybe is that what's, the voices we're hearing that eventually leads us to give in to whatever the temptation may be. And it's not much different than this, right? That we try to have the wall up between us and sin. Sometimes we find ourselves on the wall looking over at the enemy on the outside, and the enemy is just chirping, right? Who's God? God can't save you. God doesn't care. God's not going to judge you. He's not got me yet. He's not going to get you. Everybody does it. And then eventually, maybe, for right now, I turn and keep the wall there. But sometimes what happens is I listen too much to the voices on the outside, and I go on the other side of that wall.
Give in.
And I give in, right?
And we also quit drilling holes in it to peek over
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
We want the wall to be up, but hey, maybe I just peek in there.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna be real careful of that wall's there for a reason.
And
God has placed that wall in our life.
And what would have been the best thing for the people in the city to do? That they can hear the army on the outside. They know the Assyrians are on the outside, and they can hear them speaking in Hebrew, at least the people who were on the wall. If you're not one of the guards who's assigned to be up there on that wall, what would have been the best thing for you to do when you start hearing all of that?
Walk away.
Get away. Get to where you can't hear what's going on, so you're not causing yourself the unnecessary stress and anxiety and worry and allowing yourself more of a temptation to go and to bow down and to pay tribute. But understanding that they're human like we are, a lot of times we know what we should do in that situation, but what do we end up doing? Right? We want to keep hearing, and we want to hear more and more and more. Because we just, we do it to ourselves. And I'm sure there were some doing it to themselves in that situation as well, because they're like we are. And we know what we should do in the situation, but we know more often than not what we end up doing. Johnny?
I was going to say, we need to pay attention to this history,
Mm-hmm.
because right now, there are people from that area of the world that have illegally entered our country.
Well, the thing in this is more so about seeing it from the spiritual and connecting it with the church. Because it's the church that is the Israel of God. It's the church where the true application is going to be found. There may be application, in a very broad sense, but to really get to the heart of what it is that's happening here, we have to see it from the spiritual. It's not about the physical. So I don't really want to get into politics or anything like that. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and move on here. And let's go ahead and get into the message that ends up being delivered. And so let's go ahead and move, and let's have somebody read verses 36 and 37.
But people held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, do not answer him. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household of Shimba, the scribe, and Joah, the son of Asaph, the recorder, came to Hezekiah in their clothes torn, and told him the words of the ravishing.
And so here we find the response of the people. Like we just talked about, we know what the temptation would be and what our response may end up being in this. But thankfully, how do the people respond? They don't do what the Assyrians are wanting them to do. The people are not giving the Assyrians what they wanted. They hold their peace and they answer not a word. Because that's really what the Assyrians wanted. They didn't necessarily want an answer from Hezekiah or from Hezekiah's officials. They just wanted the people to start coming out of the city one by one, because all they knew is if the first one came, the second one, and then the third and the fourth, and eventually you have all the peer pressure to go on outside with everybody else. But the people did what they should have done. They didn't answer. They held their peace. And of course, then you have Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Joab, and all of Hezekiah's officials here. They respond by tearing their clothes and telling Hezekiah about what it is that has been said outside the wall. Now this as well says a lot about Hezekiah's leadership. If you go back to 2 Chronicles 36, or 2 Chronicles 32 rather. 2 Chronicles 32, and this is that section, if you remember from last week, that Alex had those really good points from. In 2 Chronicles 32, let's have somebody read verses 6 through 8 again.
Then he set military captains over the people, gathered them together to him in the open square of the city gate, and gave them encouragement, saying, Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid nor dismayed before the king of Assyria, nor before all the multitude that is with him. For there are more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God, to help us and fight our battles. And the people were strengthened by the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah.
So Hezekiah had prepared all the people before all of these things happened, basically letting them know Assyrians are coming, they're going to be intimidating, they're going to try and turn you away from God, but don't let them do it. Be strong, be of good courage, trust in God, He's able to deliver you. And thankfully the people listened and the people responded as they should. But now that Hezekiah has received the message, it's going to be up to him to how he's going to respond to this. We've already seen how he responded the last time that you had the threat from the Assyrians. If you look back previously in 2 Kings chapter 18, in 2 Kings chapter 18, if you look back at verses 13 through 16, we saw where it was after the Assyrians had taken Lachish that Sennacherib sends message to Hezekiah, or Hezekiah rather sends message to him, and basically says, I'm yours, tell me what it'll take so you don't come here, and we'll be good. And Hezekiah went and he stripped all the gold off of the walls and the pillars in the temple, and he cleaned out his treasury to pay off Sennacherib. But now that Sennacherib is not in a neighboring town, but now that he's actually literally knocking at the gates of the city in which Hezekiah lives, what is Hezekiah going to do? And that's what we're going to see when we get into chapter 19. But before chapter 19, we have our takeaways here from chapter 18. And the first one is going to be that reform begins by cleaning house. It's been like 4 weeks now, basically a month, since we started chapter 18. But if you remember, at the start of chapter 18, at the start of Hezekiah's reign, what did he do?
He turned to the Lord and tore down the high
He
places.
turned to the Lord, tore down the high places, reopened the temple. What had Hezekiah's father Ahaz done?
Everything opposite of that.
Shut the temple and promoted all the idolatry and built more and more and more and more and more high places. So when Hezekiah is going in and doing these reforms, he's having to do what is completely contrary to what his family before him had done. If we're going to make reform in our own life, a lot of times it begins where? It begins at home. Sometimes we have to clean house, if you will, if we're going to be the people that God would have us to be. The next takeaway is don't sell out your faith. This goes right back to what we just mentioned when Hezekiah initially is met with the threat from Sennacherib. And what Hezekiah do? I'm yours, right? What do you need? Oh, you need me to go and to actually get the gold that I had repaired and put back up on the temple to get it back how God wanted it to be? That's what you need? Okay, it's not that important to me anymore. I'll go and I'll melt the gold off of there. I'll give it to you. Whatever you need, take it. It wasn't so important to Hezekiah anymore, was it? If you remember, whenever we looked at that together, one of the application points we made is that a lot of times we can say the right thing, we'll do the right things when everything is good and easy in life. But as soon as the pressure's applied, as soon as we start to feel our arm being twisted just a little bit, a lot of times what happens? We cave. What we said before, what we did before, isn't all that important to us, because now all that matters is me, myself, and I. Don't sell out your faith. Third lesson we have from chapter 18. My obedience to God affects others' views of God. We saw it already this morning as it related to the fact that God was not even associated with the people of Samaria any longer. That says a lot right there about them and their view and the way they lived. But also, do you remember what was mentioned about how Hezekiah had actually eliminated all of the high places and brought worship back to one place in Jerusalem? Do you remember what Sennacherib and his men would say about that? They basically said that that was Hezekiah weakening God, that he weakened God by doing the right thing by God. Now, in the human mind, what makes the most sense is spread it out as much as you can, do as much as you can, make it as big as you can. Whereas God's way says, no, you have the one place of true worship, you have the right way to go about it with the right people to do it, and that's what glorifies God. That's where the strength in Him is going to be found. But to those on the outside, it didn't seem that way. And as we talked about, the good application there is the fact that sometimes what we do whenever we're living right for God seems strange to other people. Even others who claim to be believers and want to obey God, to them it still can seem very strange. And it may seem like, well, we're lessening the power of God by not using those gifts or those abilities that He's given to us. That we're not using it to praise and glorify Him in the way that we would think to do it. But we've got to do it His way. Got to do it His way. Do you have something, Aaron?
Yeah, and that goes to a lot of application with the church today.
Yeah.
Like, in religious bodies today is that, well, why can't we have all of these places under all these different names and all this stuff? Isn't it all just giving God the glory? But that goes back to the same thing. Well, no, because that's not what God has asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And what gives Him glory is when we do it His way, by His rules, and what He's asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, good meaning behind it all, but that doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have good meaning behind it doesn't make it right in the eyes of God. And we see that with, sure, they might have, when they started with the high places and stuff.
Good intent.
It had good intent. He didn't want, he wanted to keep people closer to home and all these different things, and wanted to make it easier for them to worship. But that isn't what God has asked for.
Well, Uzzah had good
easy.
intent when he reached out to stabilize the ark, right?
Yeah, good intent.
But is that what God wanted?
No.
And so there's, like you say, a lot of application, a lot to learn through that. But those are at least some of the takeaways. There's certainly more, but that, I think, kind of helps to look at the chapter as a whole, get it in our mind, because now we move into chapter 19. And in chapter 19, we're going to find the Lord's deliverance. Sometimes we have these chapter breaks. Chapter breaks are great because it helps us out in the morning when we're reading. And we say, all right, I've got through my chapter, I've got through my 2 chapters. And then sometimes, the day goes on. We're human. Sometimes we kind of forget about it. And then the next morning we pick up, not really remembering what we read yesterday all the time. So we don't always see the connection. But chapter 18, chapter 19, they just flow right together. That really we're still talking about the same situation, the same event. And so Hezekiah has just received word from his clearly affected officials as they've come to him with their clothes torn, a sign of grief, a sign of mourning, a sign at times of repentance, that they are at this situation that they realize it's beyond us. And they're bringing it now before Hezekiah. So what is Hezekiah going to do? And Hezekiah is going to go to God's man at the time. He's going to go to the prophet Isaiah. Let's have somebody read 2 Kings chapter 19. And we'll have somebody read, to start out with here, verses 1 through 4 with Hezekiah's request.
And so it was when King Hezekiah heard it, that he tore his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord. Then he sent Eliakim, who was over the household at Simnah, the scribe, and the elders of the priests, covered with sackcloth, for Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos. And they said to him, Thus say Hezekiah, this is the day of the trouble, and rebuke and blasphemy, for the children have come to birth. For there is no strength to bring them forth. It may be that the Lord your God will hear all the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to reproach the living God, and will rebuke the words which the Lord your God has heard. Therefore lift up your prayers for the remnant that is left.
So Hezekiah handles this situation appropriately. He doesn't cave in like he did previously, but now he is realizing what needs to be done. What's Hezekiah do initially? He tears his clothes, right? And he covers himself with sackcloth. What's that always a sign of in the Old Testament? Mourning. He's in distress. He is truly humbling himself to look to who? To look to God. Now, in order to look to God, where is it that he goes? And still in verse 1. He went where? He went to the house of the Lord. What was he doing the last time he went to the house of the Lord when Sennacherib was threatening him? He's stripping the gold off the pillars, right? He's in the house of the Lord to save himself, not to actually look to God to save him. But what's he doing now? He's looking to the Lord to save him. He's looking to God to deliver him. And so, verse 2, who is it that Hezekiah sends for? He sends for the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amoz. This is the same Isaiah that we have in the book of Isaiah. This is God's man, God's prophet, God's spokesman. And so Hezekiah is going to the right place. Now, of course, Hezekiah certainly could have gone to God himself, and he will here in just a little bit. But at least right now, Hezekiah is recognizing that maybe I'm not the right person to go to God in this moment. Because I find it interesting as well that once he starts talking to Hezekiah and he makes the request to Hezekiah to pray to God, if you look at the personal pronouns that are used, in the way Hezekiah is talking, whose God is it? Your God. Isaiah's God. But really, whose God is it? It's everyone's God. It's Hezekiah's God as well as Isaiah's God. And I wonder in looking at that if maybe it's a sign from Hezekiah, he realizes his relationship with God is not what it should be. That he realizes there's something he needs to take care of so that then he can effectively be able to reach God. Sometimes in our life we realize there's something going on that's just, it affects our relationship with God. And sometimes we need the intercession of others to be able to help us work through that. And I just wonder if that's maybe not what's happening here. Hezekiah knew what had happened, how he responded the last time the threat came. Now he knows he needs help from Hezekiah. But even in the request that's being made, it shows that Hezekiah's head is on straight. As Hezekiah is talking about the situation and the troubling nature of it, that it's as if there's no hope in anything that they're facing, he sees what the Assyrians are doing. He sees in what Sennacherib and the message from the Assyrians is that they are reproaching the living God. And Hezekiah knows that God will rebuke them for it. Hezekiah knows that God was being blasphemed and that God is not going to stand for that. And so he turns to Isaiah, looks to Isaiah to lift up his prayer for the remnant that was left, and shows that Hezekiah is starting to think correctly. As we keep looking here, because I do want to at least try to finish these verses right here, I do have this application question. I actually do have that in my notes. I just skipped right over it. What do you know? It helps whenever you look in your notes sometimes. So let's think about this for a second. Thinking about what Hezekiah has done, thinking about our lives. Whenever we are met with difficult news, how should we handle that?
A lot of times.
Do what?
You go to prayer,
You pray, right? And when you pray, who are you going to? You're going to God, right?
A lot of times we try to handle everything ourselves and think, well, I got this. Instead of, as Hezekiah, I got this, I'll just give him the gold. And it just makes the problems more confounded, more problems. And instead of doing that, he should have just went to God in the first place. And then God would have provided a solution. And that's the same way with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's usually not our go-to. I don't know if it's the pride or what it is inside us, and I know I'm guilty of this.
We just want to handle it. We just want to take care of
We
it.
want to be able to solve the problems without
having to involve anybody else.
And instead, we just need to be like, God, this is your battle. Help me fight it.
Yeah.
You know?
So we see in this, of course, we need to go to God, but also looking right here in this section, how is it that Hezekiah is going to God? He goes through Isaiah. He brings others into the situation, brings others into the problems that he's stressing over, that he's worried about, that he's dealing with. Sometimes whenever we're dealing with the distressing information, we don't want to bother others with it. But what's one of the best things we could do in the situation?
Bother others.
Sometimes, right, we look at it that way, bother others, right? But really what it is it's bringing them in. You think about Galatians 6:1-2, bear one another's burdens, so fulfill the law of Christ. If we're not including others in our struggles and our worries, then what we're doing is we're robbing others of their opportunity to be able to fulfill the law of Christ. We need to bring others in, include others, but also then think about physically where it is that Hezekiah's gone. Where did he go into? The house of the Lord. He went to the temple. He went to God's house. He didn't try to handle it from just being stuck, wallowing somewhere and just continuing the problem of the continual temptation. And he didn't try to handle it from right there. He went to the place of safety. He went to the place that he knew he needed to be. When we're dealing with problems, when we have distressing information, it can be hard. Whenever we're struggling, it can be hard to be where we need to be. But we still need to be where we need to be, right? So then, 5-7 with Isaiah's response. Let's quickly go through this. We've got about a minute or two left. I'll read these verses here. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, and Isaiah said to them, "Thus you shall say to your master, Thus says the Lord, do not be afraid of the words which you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Surely I will send a spirit upon him, and he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land." When we look at this, we basically see the response that comes. First of all, getting into verse 6, don't be afraid of the Assyrians' threat. God says, I'm going to make him leave. I'm going to make sure that he does not return. There are a couple lessons that we can learn from this. And because of time, I'll just kind of give you what I had pulled thinking about this particular thought. When we think about this message that the Lord sends back to help comfort Isaiah, the comfort we find is to see that the Lord is fully aware of those who threaten him as well as threaten his people. God hears it. God knows, and he is fully aware of it. What we also see is the fact that he is fully in control, even when it may not seem like it. To Hezekiah, it probably seemed like things were completely out of control because the Assyrians just keep surrounding the city and they just keep threatening and keep threatening and keep threatening. And they're already taking other cities in Judah. Things seemed out of control, but God still had it all under control. Another lesson is to see the fact that the Lord is sovereign, that God's in control not just over his own physical people at this time, but he is sovereign over all. And of course, through it all, we see that he is concerned with his children. And so Hezekiah should have received great comfort in what was received from the word of the Lord. And when we see what it is that he received in our moments of trouble, in our stresses, and our worries, and everything that goes on that can be challenging and troubling in this life, I pray we can find comfort in the same things too. So we'll stop right there, and Lord willing, next week we'll pick up with 2 Kings 19 and verse 8.